إمم. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. How are you, Robin?
Good. How are you?
Good.
I see so far we've got Shirley, Ellen, Angela, and there's somebody on the phone. I'm not sure who. Oh.
I think we have a total of 6 now.
Okay, great. Thank you. So 6 is quorum, I believe. So I think we could probably go ahead and kick it off. So welcome to the October meeting of the Kansas City Climate Protection Steering Committee. I'm Robin Goodall, chair of the committee. And Marlene, could we do a roll call?
Yes. All right, we have first Robin.
Here.
Goodall. Michael Kelly.
Here.
Thomas. Angela.
Here.
Beth.
Here.
Ellen.
Here.
Bill.
Here.
Bridget. Kristen. Bo. All right, we see you there. And Shirley.
Here.
And Bridget just joined us as well. Bridget.
Here.
All right, so we're missing Kristen. And I think that's it, if I'm not mistaken. And she did decline the invitation.
And Tom also,
Tom.
looks like.
Okay. Okay, well, first on our agenda today is to approve the September 2022 minutes. So before we do that, is there any corrections or discussion about the minutes? Okay, hearing none, do I have a motion to approve them?
Motion.
Second.
Okay, all in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? Okay, motion's approved, minutes are approved. I wanted to, before we move on to our Urban Heat Island program presentation, I wanted to just let everyone know that James Owen is actually not able to join us this afternoon. So we could still have a discussion if anyone has any legislative priorities they'd like to discuss, but I just wanted to give everybody a heads up about that we won't have him presenting anything to us today. But we are excited to have Jeff Mark and is it Natalie? Sorry,
It is.
I forgot to put Natalie's name on the agenda. Gray from Evergy here today to share information with us about the Urban Heat Island program. So Jeff, do you have a presentation you'd like to share?
I do.
And did we give you, oh, there it is. Okay.
All right. Can you,
Okay,
can
so-
you see that?
Great. So I will I'll hand it over to you, Jeff. Thank you and Natalie so much for being here today.
All right. Excellent. Thank you. My name is Jeff Mark, and this is Island in the Sun, Demand Side Management of Urban Heat Islands. A little background on myself. I'm the Chief Economist with Missouri Office of Public Counsel. We're the Consumer Advocate Office for Ratepayers for the state of Missouri. And the comments in the work product are my own and don't necessarily reflect that of the Missouri Office of Public Counsel. So it's a lot of information that probably everybody's already familiar with. I'm going to go through it relatively quickly. So what is an urban heat island, or UHI? The easiest explanation that I always give is just think about, the built environment, particularly if you were to walk on grass versus concrete versus asphalt on an extremely hot day. You would immediately feel that on your feet. That's definitely true for pets as well, as this graphical illustration shows. That attraction of the sun and the heat, absorbs it, depending on its surface area, and particularly the area around it. So what do I mean by that? In general, urban core areas, as opposed to rural areas, tend to have a stronger heat element, hotter degrees. So with this, what are we seeing here? The built environment clearly matters for this phenomenon. Rural areas are able to absorb both temperature and water, rain a lot better than urban areas. So you throw in the combination of buildings, pavement, garages, and so forth. It creates a situation where you could have 4 or 5, even 6 degrees hotter in downtown Kansas City than you would, say, in the surrounding suburbs. In part, what we're seeing here is what we call a feedback loop. The hotter it gets, the more that we're using air conditioner. The more you're using the air conditioner, the more you're shooting out hot air back into that atmosphere. And within an urban area, you're in a very constrained atmosphere that's influenced by the heights of buildings, the lack of soft surfaces. All of that contributes to more and more rising heat temperature within urban areas. And this is a phenomenon that's pretty well documented across the board. So this is taken from, where is this taken? It's from the EPA. It's looking at heat wave characteristics across the United States. And this is a consolidation of about 50 metropolitan areas over the past decade. And what you see is an increase in both the frequency, duration, season, and intensity of heat waves in each one of these cities. The consequences are also pretty well documented at this point. Individual pain associated with decreased health risk, health hazards from being heat exhaustion to even loss of consciousness. So we, anecdotal examples of, children playing on playground and getting, slight burns. And to the extreme example, heat-related deaths, which the World Health Organization is estimated to increase exponentially over the next decades. It also has an impact on energy and equity. So the built environment exasperates a lot of the inequities from historically just built out surfaces. We can see this is an overhead view of Cape Town, South Africa, where clear dividing line. And what you'd also find between those two sections is that on the right side is also significantly hotter. The secondary impacts and tertiary impacts also include stuff that we wouldn't normally think about. For example, stormwater runoff. One of the largest operational expenses for a water utility is actually just cleaning stormwater runoff, particularly in urban areas. So chemical cleanup and so forth. Having water, run across pavement as opposed to being absorbed within surface area has an impact both on the cost of the utility, but also in the heat and overall temperature of an urban core. And it has an economic impact. There's been copious amounts of data and studies that have looked at, the long-term duration of climate exacerbated, heat waves. So this is coming from a study done out of Nature Climate Change. And this is actually something that you can get online right now and put in. So I included, Kansas City, being forecasted in the year 2100, at a temperature of 87 would, plan to have be equivalent to 96 degrees as experienced in, the southern part of Texas today. So the impact, in terms of gross domestic product is considerable, 5.6 to even at most impacted cities as much as, double digits. And it is also strongly correlated with pollution within the urban core. So strongly correlated if you have a noticeable urban heat island, that it's also going to increase overall poor air quality. From our perspective, as the Office of Public Counsel, probably the one area that we're most concerned about is its impact on energy consumption. And it has a huge impact. We'll use the city of New York as an example. New York City demands, about 10,000 megawatts every second during a heat wave. And during a heat wave, that can exceed almost to 13,000 megawatts. So what accounts for that gap? Again, the warmer it gets, the more we use air conditioning. The more we use air conditioning, the warmer it gets. Again, it's that feedback loop that's going on. And according to International Energy Agency, for a city like Beijing, during a heat wave, 50% of the power capacity alone was just going to air conditioning. This is a huge global issue, moving forward. In areas like India and China, the use of window-controlled air conditioning units is effectively a status symbol. And as they become more developed, that load is going to become more and more pronounced. This means there's an increased cost of service. If you look back at the history of load shapes in terms of utilities across the United States, it's in the United States, it was absolutely primarily driven by the creation of the air conditioner units. And as through the 40s, the 50s, and the 60s, we had, increased load and very low cost of service. If you're increasing the load incrementally due to warmer temperatures, you're going to see a rise in electric power. And you will see a reduction in the efficiency of both power production, transmission, and distribution. So if you ever drive around and see distribution lines, if you see a sag within the lines, it's almost directly related to the fact that it's hot out. And that's actually lost energy that's in transition. So as peak and demand increases, this also increases the chance for rolling blackouts and increased cost. Summarize, a lot of bad things, both primary, secondary, and tertiary impacts can result from leaving urban heat islands unattended to. And there's no guarantee that an urban heat island will follow a linear growth trend line. So we could see exponential growth, it far exceeds any sort of linear growth, just based off of a few, minor changes. So where does demand side management strategies look into this? Well, demand side management, if you're not familiar with it, is largely what we refer to as energy efficiency. And typically, energy efficiency programs operate on trying to use energy more efficient and eliminate energy waste. So insulation, more efficient light bulbs, so forth. Historically, that might look something like this. Doing an audit on a home, for example, and finding out where there's leakage coming from. Approaching it in the future would really be, in terms of the urban heat island, would be taking that same approach and looking at effectively doing an audit for the city and approaching it in a very similar manner. Another analogy might be one of considering urban heat island areas within a geographic area within a city as analogous to cancer. So that there's cancer cells within, a body, and we wanted to try to mitigate those or eradicate those as much as possible. That would require intensive treatment. So who coordinates and who champions, and why is this discussion so important today in front of this committee? Well, I believe that Evergy and the city of Kansas City could play a critical role, ideally as front-end institutional enablers. Effectively, this is a discussion that's been ongoing for about 4 years now, 4 years now. And Natalie's going to extend a little bit more of a historical perspective on that in a second. But in our last Evergy MIA application, we engaged a variety of different stakeholders on this topic of the urban heat island. Those are listed in front of you. Excuse me. What's taking place now is even more pronounced as Evergy approaches their next MIA application. We also happen to have a policy window in front of us that could extend both to local communities, commercial industrial customers, Kansas City hospitals, and a variety of nonprofits, due in part largely to federal funding that's become available. Back in 2020, it was the CARES Act funds that were coming out of COVID-19. But since then, we've got the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, which allocates federal funding both for urban heat island-like processes or products, and the Inflation Reduction Act, which also provides different funding for this. Making that happen requires a degree of coordination. And this is something I'd refer to as network governance, or it's an informal arrangement to establish a collaborative governing coalition. So this requires a variety of actors, private sector, government, NGOs, and others, and most importantly, citizens at the local level to get input. The nice thing about an urban heat island is that it really operates as this sort of Venn diagram of intersecting a variety of different positive impacts across not necessarily historically connected groups. So determining the best course of action. In short, it typically involves a feasibility study and project management that's taking stock of the problem and the resources, gathering, analyzing data, engaging stakeholders, developing policy, and implementing policy. A lot of this stuff's already taken place. A lot of it has already occurred to date. Like I said, this has been an on again, off again discussion that's taken place over about 3 or 4 years now. But we're hoping to revise that again for the opportunities that have opened up with federal funding. With the feasibility study, it's not starting from scratch. We could also rely, or at least expand on the one that was already completed by the National Lab, Lawrence Berkeley National Labs. And here's a reference to the Heat Island Mitigation Assessment and Policy Development for the Kansas City region, which was largely spurred by the Mid-America Regional Council, or MARC. So those of you who are familiar with Tom Jacobs, this was a passion project of his, or still is. From a regulatory perspective, it's important for us to establish baselines and to model scenarios to look at this both ex ante and ex post to show that there is a problem and what that mitigation helps solve for. This can be conducted through a variety of different means. So satellite imagery from urban heat island, you can look at this here. This is also information that is currently taking place with the city of St. Louis and East-West Gateway, who's conducting this information on the east side of the state. And this would allow us to basically find which parts of that urban area are most critically in need or in terms of mitigation. Again, think of it in terms of, cancerous cells. There's also crowdsourcing from NOAA. The city of Kansas City has already contributed to this, was a host city or selected by NOAA last spring. It was either last spring or the spring before that to collect information. But it was a great example of getting more primary data to validate the opportunity for mitigation. What sort of measures or actions would we be talking about? Cool roofs are an obvious example. So changing the color of a roof can actually have a profound impact, especially over scale, many cool roofs. Green walls, so vegetation, which allows for both absorption from rain, but also a cooling of the overall building itself. Cool pavements, significant amount of funding that's been opened up to repave urban areas and cities, streets. Green roofs, tree canopies, and an overall increase in soft surfaces, as mentioned before. One of the more promising developments that we've seen here is ultra white paint. So the University of Purdue come up with the whitest of white paint, with largely contains barium sulfate. So researchers demonstrated that outdoors, the paint can keep surfaces 19 degrees Fahrenheit cooler than their ambient surroundings at night. This could potentially be a large game changer, and to really emphasize like how big that we're talking about, consider this following quote from the academic study. If you were to use this paint to cover a roof area of about 1,000 square feet, we estimate that you could get a cooling power of 10 kilowatts. That's more powerful than the central air conditioners used by most houses. The big hurdle at this point in terms of barium sulfate seems to be one of just getting enough up to scale. So I've had preliminary talks with both Purdue's mechanical engineering department about this, but this is also another opportunity for utilities and cities to combine to examine what the impact of doing scale like barium sulfate across an extended surface or multiple different domiciles would have on reductions in energy costs, and then all of the associated externalities, positive externalities that would come from that. Those are the reference studies. So again, the big question that we get here in Jefferson City is how do we pay for something like this? Well, under the regulatory model, and this is something that, again, that I've been promoting as an option for Evergy to consider in their next ME application, it would be to perform a feasibility study, which effectively we have done to a certain extent. It would be largely updating the old Berkeley study. And then getting buy-in from diverse actors, both of the public, private, and nonprofit and regulatory sense. Basically, it's swimming in your lanes and knowing, when to ask for help. In this case, from our office, we feel like we do a pretty good job of knowing what we do well, and that's teeing up, these sort of issues for other actors to take on. From Evergy's perspective, they're a utility. They're very good at providing service and can enable, opportunities for more customer side participation. But from the government sector at the local level, those that are most directly impacted on this, it's critical that we get buy-in from the city of Kansas City and actors that are interested in this. Not only for just validation, but they bring a skill set that, quite frankly, probably doesn't exist in a lot of other sectors. And that comes in the form of grant writing, being able to, even be eligible for certain applications. bringing those actors together, having the empirical data to look at and then extrapolate from, ultimately results in a cost-benefit ratio and provides opportunities to justify the investment moving forward or not, depending on what the results actually come out. It also provides opportunities, at the end of the day, MIA is set up to go ahead and reward the utilities for reducing load. And in this case, the mechanism that we had proposed was something that would provide an opportunity for the utility to attract capital, whether that comes from the federal government, which I think there's more than enough opportunity for federal funds, but also perhaps from the private sector or from the nonprofit sector to go ahead and work towards mitigation efforts. And all of this would be done with focusing on agreed to objectives. So the potential options above and beyond the regulatory model include stuff like impact bonds or results-based financing, modeled after the World Bank. And there's extensive literature on that and how that might relate to urban heat islands and cities and utilities that are interested in pursuing this venture. I won't go into detail here, but there's a link to the example. Final thoughts. Every urban heat area will experience the effects of excess heat in urban heat islands in unique ways based on location, size, shape of the city, the building types, and the construction practices, as well as the existing land cover, the climate, and meteorological conditions. In short, this is a wicked problem. I mean, there are many confounding variables that impact temperature and the climate, within a given urban core. So putting in a lot of cool roofs or pavement can have impacts that we don't necessarily, we don't know what we'll get. So this, all the more reason that modeling and engaging different actors is a necessity. And I put in, watch for unintended consequences. I see also clouds. So, what I would encourage if the city's interested in this, we've extended an invitation to the city of Kansas City as well as a variety of other actors for a meeting here in the next month that engage climatologists, meteorologists, urban planners across the area, including the University of Missouri, Kansas City, University of Kansas, University of Missouri, as well as a lot of different NGOs or quasi-governmental entities like Mid-America Regional Council. And then consistently reevaluate best practices that are still in emerging fields. Lots of information out there. I can say of the universe of projects that I've worked on, I've never received more interest and more help than on this topic alone. So whether that's engagements with Berkeley Labs, NOAA, EPA, DOE, there's a lot of people very interested in taking this on. Cities that have recently passed ordinances for the urban heat island include the city of Seattle, who passed urban heat island mitigation efforts and measures for their city-run utility. Now, Kansas City is obviously unique in this sense that you don't have a city-run investor-owned utility or a city-run municipal utility. You have an investor-owned utility. But this could be an opportunity for a proof of concept effectively for DSM for an investor-owned utility across the United States. So stated differently, if it's successful here, this is something that could potentially be replicated in cities across the country. Some more links and available for questions after Natalie Gray speaks. So Natalie, if you want to take it on over, I'll exit out of this.
Yeah, did you incorporate my slides, Jeff, or do I need to pull mine up?
I can bring them up, but I think it might be easier for you just to bring yours up.
Sure.
If you have problems, just let me know. I've got your PowerPoint right here.
All right, well, I am having some issues trying to get it to presentation mode, but if you all just want to look at it in the viewing mode, I think that's okay. You'll be able to see what I'm seeing. Can you all hear me all right?
Yes.
Yes, okay. Let me attempt to share my screen here and we'll dig in.
Oh.
All right. Okay, so thanks for letting me come here and piggyback off Jeff's message about Urban Heat Island. I know that there's been a great deal of interest in this area historically and continued to this point in time. Really what I'm hoping to do is walk through some of the previous initiatives in which Evergy has supported the Urban Heat Island and dig into our commitment to move forward with this initiative. By the way, my name is Natalie Gray, and I am the manager of our DSM Energy Efficiency Products and Services team at Evergy. Okay, Joe, so just a quick overview of some local activity to date. Jeff had mentioned Mark's research. They've done a great deal of research on this specific topic, in which actually dates clear back to 2015. So obviously this has been a long-standing area in which multiple organizations across the area and across the state, country, world have all been trying to understand and figure out really how we can help support and mitigate what this thing is called the Urban Heat Island. Also UMKC, Dr. Sun, that works there on campus, has also had a passion for Urban Heat Island and doing research, conducting research, and identifying ways in which we can offset that in our local area, which actually continued into the research that Jeff also mentioned, creating these really great heat maps and a report under a heat watch. The research was actually conducted there the summer before last, and this report that's linked within this file, and y'all can get to, and I can share this following the meeting today, has all of the details of the research that was conducted. It was a really neat initiative in which there were several different organizations that helped volunteer to drive around the entire city on one of the hottest summer days. And each of the vehicles had temperature gauges and humidity sensors, and they tracked the differences as they were driving around all of the different neighborhoods. And then they sent them back off to the CAPA, and in which these really neat heat maps were created to really help us understand what's going on and representing the Kansas City, Missouri specifically area. Let me just zoom in here, see if this works. As part of the research that was included, they were, shared specific pictures of what they were seeing while they were out in these fields in certain red areas. So you can see where the tree cover is lacking, residential streets heat up. This is a street here. As you can see, very limited tree canopy covering the street, which heats things up in that neighborhood. There's also the asphalt dense areas with the homogeneous building heights. They really trap in the heat. And they remained warm throughout the day. And then this is an ideal picture here. Look at all of these wonderful trees. I bet they are all turning orange and yellow and red today and looking beautiful. But this really represents what that looks like in an area that is cool, right? There's tree coverage. There's adequate tree coverage covering the streets and the asphalt and the dark surfaces, including the homes alongside, which also is very beneficial to the AC load as well. So again, this is the most recent research in this area that I'm aware of. This study and report was just released here this most recent spring. And then I also wanted to talk about specific Evergy work that we've been conducting clear back into 2019 into current. We've been partnering with Bridging the Gap to provide trees through our MIA portfolio of programs to our urban core targeted customers to help with tree canopy coverage. And this graphic here on the right represents the impact that this program has had to date. This is also an Arbor Day Foundation partnership in which they provide an iTree tool in which customers can identify the most ideal energy savings location for the different tree types that we have available for the customer to plan, and for the biggest energy savings and shade providing impacts long term. And so you can see we've provided about almost 1,900 trees to date, which has had tremendous impact on air pollutants being absorbed, energy savings based on the shade that the tree provides, both directly to the homes and businesses, but also to increase the evapotranspiration that occurs with the trees to decrease the surrounding air temperature and decrease the need for cooling load. And then I also did want to point out that we have a public and business property program in which we have Evergy's Green Team. Evergy's Green Team was historically a West Star Tree program and environmental initiative that when we merged with West Star to become Evergy, they become part of the Evergy culture and what we are all about and what we provide today in support of helping make the improvements on sustainability and different green efforts. And so they've also been planning some vegetation around, like, for example, the Little Brew River. They've been helping with community projects here and there, and then also the Johnson County or the Jackson County Parks and Recs Association as well. So I feel like this is an area that we're continuing to grow and helping support and with the energy savings trees initiatives. But in general, I would say that we have a really great course in place, and we've seen great success with our marketing and customer interest in that area, something that we're looking forward to continuing on. And I did want to also call out that Bridging the Gap does have their Heartland Tree Alliance. I wasn't sure exactly where this would fit in best, but they do have their right-of-way in parks, programs in which they do plant some trees in those areas as well. So we've been historically and continue to make some efforts in the areas of tree canopy, which has been proven to be a very cost-effective, if not the most cost-effective means to offset urban heat island. But we continue to research other ways in which we can help support this cause as well. Which brings me to the next slide where we talk about the urban heat island offset research project that we did conduct with our implementer ICF, in which they pulled some research data locally to understand what is the most impactful and what meets the requirements under our MIA standard and structure for cost effectiveness for energy savings versus cost, essentially. And while white roofs did fare fairly well, what we found was it was a little bit limited in scope and what the impact of some of the building types based on their heating type and location and current load. Sometimes what they found through their research was that if you make the roofs too light, then in the winter months, they actually don't have the ability to absorb the heat from the sun to offset their heating load. And sometimes that could actually offset the savings that the customer could see. But keeping this in mind, we did find that there is still some opportunity there for customers in which they could benefit in their energy usage and also in their urban heat island and emissions reduction initiatives as well. And then I also wanted to call out that we did have a collaborative cohort in place there in 2018, 2019, in which we had pulled together multiple organizations, agencies, associations that have interest in urban heat island and talking about and brainstorming and coming up with, really understanding what research has been completed to date, what needs to be completed going forward, where the gaps are. That collaborative is no longer in place. However, as Jeff mentioned, we are committed to getting re-engaged in this topic and trying to figure out, how we can move forward and really have a good solid path in which we can make wonderful strides along with all of the different various stakeholders that are vested in this common topic. So this is the actual language from our commitment outlined here. So it does say that we are committed to researching and providing additional sessions in which we're going to be pulling in folks with oh, James, look at your baby. Hi. So our go forward commitment is really just geared towards understanding how we can help move this initiative forward with all of the best intentions in place. As Jeff mentioned, you know, there are some potential partners that we've already coordinated with for a meeting on November 9th. So if any of you are not included in that invite that was just sent out earlier today and are interested in taking part in this series of sessions that we've committed to having over the next 6 months or so, please do feel free to reach out to me and I can certainly get you added to those if this is an area that you're interested in helping and engaging and moving forward. So I will mention that the previous collaborative members included all of these listed here. I have bolded those that are interested and have experienced some good historic presence and research in this area previously. And then we have some new session members that I've identified here as well that are going to be included. But again, if you're not listed here and you're interested in joining, please do feel free to reach out. This is just my email address, natalie.gray@evergy.com, if you are interested in, or if you have questions that you want to follow up with me afterwards. That is really what I had to share with you today, and that concludes my part of the presentation. I see, Jeff, you're back on. Do we want to go ahead and open it up for any questions or comments?
Thank you guys so much for your presentations. Okay, I see Bridget has her hand up. Bridget?
Sorry, I just had a whole bunch of pop-ups on my screen pop up, so I panicked. Jeff, I'm really curious, and I might have missed this beforehand, but you had stated that one of like the unintended consequences of this like built infrastructure is clouds, and I'm just really curious about that, why that is.
Jeff, you're muted.
Just can't hear you. You're not muted, but we can't hear you.
I think he might, is he not? He looks like he's still muted. He's still showing up as muted on my screen, so. Nope, still muted. Still nothing.
And sometimes when I lock up, I do Control-Shift-M and it unlocks it.
Nope, still nothing.
I do have another question for Natalie that I can ask while Jeff figures this out. Yeah, so Natalie, I was also curious, I know we've been working around the like Spire agreement and stuff like that, and things that have been coming up is about like the tree canopy and trying to get data on gas leaks or anything, methane gas leaks or anything like that, because, you know, if we're planting a bunch of trees, as you all seem to be doing with Bridging the Gap and groups, are you going to be, I'm curious if Evergy is planning on also kind of pushing this idea about we need to know where these gas leaks are or else we're going to kill off all these trees we're planting?
think Jeff's back on and maybe has sound.
I was
Can you hear-
pausing.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. I'm sorry. Did Natalie, were you going to answer a question, or should I answer the clouds?
Maybe you can answer the clouds, and then Bridget, if that's okay, we'll come back to yours since Jeff's back. Okay.
Yeah, Bridget, the short answer on the clouds was some emerging literature that had come out on the topic. I want to say from Phoenix that they had gotten a grant and done some extensive urban heat island work, and it actually impacted the cloud cover, is what they determined. There were less clouds that actually formed, so as a result of that. So that's really what I've been cautioned with from the climatologist is just that all of it is all interconnected.
So we just need to build mountains in Kansas City.
But yeah, this is just still very much an emerging field. So, you know, the one thing that I would stress is that, you know, Phoenix isn't Kansas City. So, you know, what takes place there isn't necessarily synonymous here. And it's the same thing for, you know, New York City or anywhere else. So this would be very much a Kansas City specific address. And probably I had referenced this in a previous talk, but I've had a great opportunity to speak with 3 professors out of the University of Kansas that had recently completed a white paper on this topic on that issue that I can forward out to the group.
I would love to see that. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that sounds interesting to me too. Okay, so Bridget, your question was related to Spire, and there was some natural gas leak issues.
Yeah, so we know that if, you know, there's gas leaking into the environment around trees that we're planting in our tree canopy, that can essentially suffocate our trees and our tree canopy. And so I was just curious if you all plan as a team on Evergy to like work with Spire to like figure out where these gas leaks are, so we're not just planting and replanting trees and cutting down trees because of gas leaks or anything like that.
So I appreciate you bringing that to my attention because I hadn't heard of that yet. But if there is potential issues there, then we would certainly want to circle up with Spire. Actually, Evergy, we co-deliver several of our programs with them already through our MIA platform, including our, you know, income eligible weatherization program and multifamily program and our kids program. And so we're very familiar with that group of folks. And certainly we'll happily coordinate with them. I might go ahead and add them to our distribution for our discussions. So
yeah, I think sorry, I totally interrupted you. Yeah, I think you know, Spire I think has a responsibility to replant trees due to gas leaks or anything like that. But, you know, at the end of the day, older trees are bringing, you know, are better, you know, carbon sinks than newer trees. And so stopping that before, you know, we're killing off our trees or anything like that, I think working together would be great. So that's just all I was asking.
Yeah, I think that that's a great comment and plot. I will certainly reach out to, you know, Shaylin there to see if and how we can work together to make that happen. I will say I had mentioned to him some of our pilots and including the energy savings trees, and he was interested, so certainly can circle up with him for sure. Any other questions or comments?
Well, while people are thinking about that, one resource that I would throw out there is if you get an opportunity to look at Cool City Alliance, which is really, you know, it's an organization, you know, dedicated to this topic and has a lot of different case studies and examples. A lot of the work then is also, you know, it's not just U.S. centric. It's been scaled up across the world in a variety of different places. So the World Bank, for one, is very interested in this issue. and has allocated funds with IMF as well in emerging countries. So what's unique about this potential here is really that investor-owned utility perspective, and looking at it through the lens of demand side management. So it's really looking at it from a different perspective and leveraging really resources within the greater Kansas City area. There's a lot of passionate actors, no doubt, here, that I really do believe that I've got sort of a best case scenario that should open up with where we're at right now, especially in line with federal funding that's coming down the pipeline.
So in terms of any next steps, and I got distracted there for a second, but Andy or Laura, do either one of you want to weigh in? Are there any next steps that the committee could help with, or that I guess I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, sure. So we were involved, of course, as Jeff had mentioned, in the previous iteration of this. Even I think I attended the last two prior to COVID kicking in. So I think we're very much interested in participating in this. We did get the invitation and we're signed up, ready to go. We know there's a couple of strategies, actions in the plan that are around Heat Island. So this is a perfect opportunity to kind of get involved with this. I would just, if there is some folks that have the time and the inclination to participate, contact Natalie and sign up. I mean, the more the merrier. So happy to participate in this process.
Great. So it sounds like there's not anything you need from the committee in order to participate, that's on your radar and you guys are moving ahead.
We're already
So
in there. Yep,
awesome.
We're good to go.
Okay. Okay. Great. So can you remind when the meeting is being held, Jeff?
Yeah, Natalie, it's November. I don't know. Did we decide on it on an actual day?
Yeah, it's November 9th from 3:30 to 5.
Right.
That's
Okay.
a Wednesday.
And I'd love to see that study that you presented on with the orange and blue map spots, if that's something that you're able to share.
Yeah, that's the UMKC heat watch.
Okay.
Yeah, we can definitely do that. And Dr. Sun, who spearheaded that grant, will be part of this discussion as well. And I don't know if I mentioned it in the presentation, but we're having a very similar conversation going on the east side of the state with the city of St. Louis. So at some point, I would like to bring both entities together and see what sort of synergies we can get, if any. Okay.
Sounds good. Thank you so much, Jeff and Natalie, for your time today and for the presentation. And,
Yeah, thank you.
Appreciate it.
All right.
Just real quick, Jeff, before you go, as you mentioned that about St. Louis, Kansas City is part of the Midwest Climate Collaborative. And so I don't wonder if that might be an avenue for us to get together to do that, because that's a university city, joint collaborative. So that might be an avenue to do that Heat Island.
That's a great idea. Andy, who would be a point contact with that collaborative?
It's Heather Navarro.
Okay. Heather's mentioned that before. Then I don't think I've thought about it in terms of with Kansas City, but I'll bring it up with Heather.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, I guess we'll sign off. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Jeff
All right,
and Natalie.
Thank you. Take care.
Take care. Okay. The next item on our agenda is legislative priorities, which we put here thinking that we may have some priorities to discuss and officially recommend to the mayor to consider for his platform for this year. we were not able to have a subcommittee meeting in between meetings. So I guess, and James Owen, who is not able to join us either today. So I guess I would just open it up to the committee to discuss, to see if there are any legislative priorities anyone on the committee would like to discuss or put forward. I know in our climate plan, there's at least a mention of, having clean energy and rent control included as suggestions for the city's legislative priorities. But I just thought we'd open it up for any discussion or ideas or thoughts that anyone wanted to put forward.
And Robin, if you don't mind,
Yeah.
real quick, just to let the committee know, the departments were asked for their legislative priorities about 2 weeks ago. So we've already been given, our due date was actually on Friday of last week.
Okay.
So this office has already submitted its legislative priorities. I did ask some input from the Environmental Management Commission because they met last week. So we got some input from them. I dropped in the chat the primary one that we put in as a recommendation to the mayor's office. So you can take a look at that. Hopefully that captures quite a bit of what's in the climate plan, but we did 3 other legislative priorities. One around building efficiency. So expanding programs for building efficiency, energy efficiency programs. We had 2 others that came from the Environmental Management Commission around renewable fuel standards, and then one on an alternate to the current gas fuel tax, the way based on vehicle weights, on how that is put together. I'll drop those in here shortly as well while you guys have your conversation. So you can kind of see what we put together from the office. And speaking with the mayor's office, the committee, they're still looking for, if the committee wants to put together some recommendations, then they certainly will entertain those.
Thanks,
The
Andy.
sooner the better, though. The sooner the better.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'm not sure who had their hand up first. I think maybe it was Beth. But or maybe it was Michael, because you're at the top, Michael. So I'm not sure who did first, but.
I can go
Go ahead.
first.
Okay.
Be quick if it's okay with Beth. Yeah. So in terms of what we had discussed with the EMC, and I'll bring it up here. I had spoken on kind of 2 transportation related elements that I thought would be small elements, but important to add for the legislative consideration. The first is that with regards to bike and pedestrian infrastructure and transit, also making sure there's an explicit element for consideration of accessibility improvements for people living with disabilities. All of these elements are good, but we also have to be cognizant of how we can pursue projects that will also support people who are differently abled in our city. The other thing that I specifically wanted to mention is that if there is any specific elements around electric vehicles, whether they're heavy or whatever, making an explicit consideration in the language to also include electric bikes. So they are quickly becoming very popular across the country, and an increasing number of communities and states are adopting rebate programs that make it easier for people, especially lower income users as well as people with disabilities, to be able to buy electric cycles. And so Kansas City should be included in that element as well.
Is there something you can send that has all of that?
In terms
Or-
of just like the language specifically, yeah, I can send that to Andy, and yeah.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Michael. Beth, I think you're next.
Yeah, thanks, Robin. So in terms of housing, I think the more prudent housing platform for us to support would actually be a local housing platform, there's going to be a bond on the ballot to approve of $50 million in affordable housing. So I know that rent control is in the climate protection plan, and certainly still support the spirit of rent control, but in terms of really focusing our state platform on things that we can focus on, like this upcoming legislative session, I just want to elevate that there's going to be a bond on our local ballots in Kansas City to approve affordable housing. And that also kind of flies on the tails of a resolution that was approved through City Council last Thursday, which was ensuring that a large portion of this housing trust fund will support truly affordable housing and low income housing. So I wanted to elevate that and put that, before the steering committee's consideration. I know the turnaround is really quick, but yeah, that just seems prudent, and that seems in line with, the climate protection plan and everything that we discussed relating to housing during the development of this plan.
So how are you envisioning because I guess I was approaching this from I know the mayor puts together a list for the state, but how do you envision the committee supporting the ballot measure?
I think we could vote on it. Perhaps let's just making a motion right here for the steering committee to support the local ballot measure. And I'll put the link here in the chat for anyone who wants to read more about it. This is something that Casey Tennant is advocating for. The City Council unanimously approved the measure to ensure that LOTA, that this trust fund would fund low to moderate income homes and truly affordable housing. So if we want to vote on it, and that way we could, show our support in other ways. But yeah.
I guess one question I would have is I definitely support the bond measure and everything, but I would be curious to know if we as a committee are specifically allowed to weigh in on local measures in this manner. It's not that I don't support it. It's just that I don't know if we as an entity in this fashion can specifically weigh in on legislation that's supposed to go to a vote. So
that's a good question. I'm actually not sure.
Yeah, we can run that through our legal folks. They sent out something recently, so I'm gonna reference that while you guys are talking to see if there's any language for committees and commissions.
Thank you, Andy. Maybe while he's doing that, we can move on to Bridget's suggestion. Is that okay, Beth?
Yes.
Yeah, I think my biggest input, just having worked at the Missouri State and through the legislative process for the past 3 years, I sat down with Representative Emily Weber and I've been in chats with Patty Lewis and everybody who's not in a competitive competition right now. Election. The dancer just came out. To just try to get a heads up of what they think that's going to come down the pipeline. And Emily and I were going to have a lot more productive meeting, but I was realizing that most of it that could happen at the state level is preempting local control. And so I think that some type of statement, Andy, or, committee or whoever, of just not preempting local control to stop what we're trying to do with the climate plan is really important. I know that's incredibly vague, but the Missouri legislature loves preemptions. So.
Yeah, Bridget, and that's not uncommon. The city puts that in there as a catch-all. That's already in there from what I've seen. They put that in there usually as recurring.
Sad, but thank you, Andy.
Yeah.
Thanks, Bridget. I see Shirley has her hand up. Shirley?
My concern, because yes, I agree that we need to have this bond measure, but do they have anything built in that the builder themselves can only make a certain profit so that we can have more housing versus, because I've seen all the profits that are being made off of these builders and these houses and stuff. And my concern is, yes, we need affordable housing, but we need as much of it as possible. And I'd like to see most of the money go for the homes for the people that need and not the profit of the builder.
Yeah, so that's a good question. And I think that that is the big reason why a lot of council, I forget exactly who co-sponsored it, but it was the majority of council co-sponsored a resolution that stated that the majority of this housing trust fund would go towards truly affordable housing. And forgive me, I should have had all of the details pulled up, but it's that lower income level within a percentage of AMI that we're really not seeing the development of that housing go towards today. So the council unanimously passed that resolution last week that was carried by the advocacy of KC tenants. And the next step would be to pass this ballot initiative to ensure that there's funding for it. So from what I have noticed, I don't know that the city council can limit the profits or by the inverse. I think the guardrails are more so around how much of this funding goes towards the truly affordable housing versus the kind of luxury housing that that the city has a pattern on approving. The other piece of that is building codes was also passed last week, so I want to celebrate that for a second. But this definitely does kind of pair well with the passage and implementation of building codes that ensures that newer construction will be energy efficient for its inhabitants. So I don't know if that answers your questions, but the long story short is that the effort or the goal is to ensure that this housing is truly affordable.
Thank you.
Okay. Andy, any luck with
Yeah,
the
just
language?
skimmed through it. What they issued was strictly around for city employees and what we can and can't do. So it does say that if there are any questions, send them to the law department. So yeah, you might want to send a note to Elward and just run that by him.
Well, I guess the issue is that that's coming up on this upcoming election. So if we were going to support it, we would have to do it now, right?
Would it, well, I don't know, I'm not a lawyer. Would it be possible to take a vote and then hold off on making any sort of announcement and then vote pending legal approval?
I understand the want to try to get something done quick, but if there's a question of whether we can legally do this or not, then I'd rather have the legal question answered first.
Can we do an email vote?
I'd be fine with doing it after. Yeah, I'd be fine with doing that if we get the clearance from legal. So
It works for me too.
Sounds good. Okay. So then it sounds like Bridget's suggestion is already covered, but maybe we could just make sure of that, Andy. And so then should we, Michael, would you like for us to take a vote on supporting your, including your suggestions as official committee recommendations?
Yes, so that'd be fine. And I will add before it's everyone's voting on this that I also brought this up with the EMC and they supported this as well. But to Robin's point, I'm making a formal motion that language, a recommendation from the CPSC be included that language regarding accessibility infrastructure as well as specific explanation of electric bikes under any explanation of electric vehicles be included in the CPSC recommendations for state and federal legislative priorities. Can I get a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All those
I,
opposed? Motion passes. Back to you, Robin.
All right, thanks, Michael. Okay. In the interest of time, I think I'd like to move on then. So our next agenda item is for an update from OEQ. So I'd like to turn it over to Andy
Sure.
to give us an update.
So quick question for you regarding the legislative priorities. Michael, are you going to send your text to Robin? And Robin, do you want to package that into one document from the CPSC? Or do you want to just send the language to me and I would send it on to the mayor's office myself just through an email? You can go either way. If they're sort of handling this informally, but if you want to do it as a document from the steering committee, that's fine too.
I did email the language to both of you, so I'm fine with whatever is more comfortable for
Yeah,
for you.
whatever you want to do then, Robin. It's
Yeah.
good for me.
If we want to have it come from the committee, if you guys could help me get it on the letterhead.
Yeah. if you just
Whatever
put the
you think
document-
is effective, yeah.
Yeah, I want to give you the opportunity. I
Or
can
if
do
in
it
the
either way.
interest of time, if faster is better and you want to just send it on, that's fine with me too, so.
Okay, then I just need the language. If I got Michael's language, then any others, yeah, it just needs to be sent to me.
Okay,
All right.
thank you.
Hey, Andy, I'm so sorry for
Yeah.
interrupting really fast. I'm curious, I know that you said that there's a blanket statement on preemption, but is there any way we could put the language as, and I can write this to you, but essentially like the key aspects of the climate plan, just to make sure that like the Office of Environmental Quality is realized, or like, the mayor is realizing, the committee, I guess, I don't know, we should maybe vote on this, should, we're not for any preemption with regards to transportation, building, food waste, all of the things that we have been working on in this plan, to not deter from the climate plan for Kansas City. So I don't know how specific that is, but.
Yeah, because the language that's typically used is not that specific. It's more general for all of the city legislative priorities. So if you want something more specific towards the climate, I would probably suggest the committee probably approve that recommendation. And then if you want to send me the language, then I will send that on.
Bridget, the only concern I have with trying to narrow that is that if there's something else that comes up that isn't covered in that language, then are we going to have a harder time conveying that to Representative Weber and the rest of the delegation in Jeff City?
That's a very good point, Michael. I mean, I think that the Kansas City delegation is less of the issue. But
fair enough.
Yeah, I mean, it's I don't know what the verbiage would be, so I'm not sure that I could like send a formal motion on any type of language with regards to this. So I guess just chilling with the general preemption language will be great, because I didn't think this through beforehand.
All right. Okay, so OEQ update. So several things I want to cover. I'll try to keep it somewhat brief. First off, we're going to revisit the whole conversation around Energy Star certification for city facilities. I know several of you are probably familiar with our Resolution 18-1000, which happened several years ago. The idea around that was, of course, trying to get 90% of our eligible city buildings for Energy Star to be certified. So it happens to be the 30th anniversary for Energy Star. So EPA is doing a certification nation campaign right now. So we've been speaking with our energy manager here in the city and really want to take advantage of that opportunity to bring some recognition to the city. We believe the last I've seen is we'll probably have about 6, maybe 7 city facilities that would be eligible to certify based on our Energy Star score for those buildings. So for us to meet our goal for the 18-1000 resolution, we'd have to get to 14 city facilities. So we're not there yet. We're realistically about half of that. But in order to be acknowledged by EPA for the certification nation, you need 5. So I think we can cover that threshold. So the work has got to get done between now and the end of the year. We need to get those buildings certified by an architect. We have one on staff in the city. It's just a matter of going through, doing the walkthroughs and certifying the data. So we'll be working with the energy manager to try to get that accomplished before the end of the year. But I thought it was relevant to bring up just because from time to time I get questions about how are we doing in terms of complying with the resolution 18-1000. So just letting folks know, we haven't forgot about some of those past commitments where you try to roll them in where you can. And so that one we're going to try to circle back on here and kind of get that knocked out, at least partially before the end of the year. In terms of trying to get to the 14 goal, I think I've mentioned that we've got energy service providers that the city's brought on board through a contract. So right now those companies are looking at some of our city facilities. Parks and Recreation is primarily being visited, as a central focus for at least one of the companies. I believe Conventions is the other one. But they're looking at a lot of those facilities, doing audits, looking at the systems and seeing where the low-hanging fruit is on that. So we'll start receiving proposals from those contractors over the next month or two. We really want to see those projects because we did provide money to our General Services Department that we had from the Department of Energy to spend on energy efficiency projects. So that's going to be in concert with the work that the ESCOs do for the city. So just kind of want to touch on energy efficiency and Energy Star buildings. We haven't really talked about that for some time. So just throwing that out there. Any questions on that before I move on to another topic? Okay. Solar, let's talk about solar. So a few things. The solar array project is moving forward. The first step in that process was to look at the 3,000 acres that we have up at primarily the west side of the airport. We believe that, if you could turn that into a solar field, it'd be somewhere around 500 megawatts is what would be the capacity for that. But what we did as a feasibility study was the first part of this project. We hired a consultant with Olson to kind of go out there. They first did kind of an assessment of other airports, see what's being done around the country, particularly ones that were comparable to KCI. So we looked at Denver, Indianapolis, I think San Diego, Sacramento, I don't recall which one it was, but looked at a few to benchmark with, and then started looking at the land itself, the property. The property it's a wide variety of issues, topography, wetlands, wildlife issues. So they looked at all of that to kind of see how much do we have to work with if we were to try to minimize our impacts and therefore minimize our costs. So realistically, we've got about 1,100 acres that would need minimal amount of work to bring up to spec for a solar field. And one of the main recommendations that came out of the feasibility study was to kind of do this in phases. So a phased approach, four different phases. So we basically, with some help from NREL, put together a request for proposals, and that was released September 22nd. And so that is out on the street right now. And what the city's looking for is basically a proposer to basically address design, construction, engineering, permitting, basically operate and maintain the solar array. The city will more or less lease the land, and in turn, I think what the city is looking to get out of that is either the energy or offsets in terms of energy savings at the airport. So there's still a lot of questions that the feasibility study raised, and we'll kind of hope that the proposals will help address some of those concerns. If we look at a phased-in approach, we suggested Site 3 out of the 4 sites that are up at the airport, and that is about 136 acres, somewhere around 35 megawatts in capacity. So, but as part of the proposals, we're asking to kind of plan out what would a full build out look like. If we start with site 3, what does phase 2, phase 3, and phase 4 look like into the future? So we're kind of, we felt like we'll start small, see how it goes with whoever we select. We kind of want to leave ourselves some options if for some reason things didn't necessarily work out the way we were expecting after phase 1, then we can stop and reevaluate before we move on to phase 2, 3, and 4. So that particular project has MB, WBE goals. They're 11% for MB and 11% for WBE. They've got it out on the street. The RFP closes January 25th. So it's going to be out for a little bit. We've got an evaluation committee that will be put together that will kind of go through those proposals, and we'll see what's being suggested. So pretty exciting stuff on that. So that's out there. And then Bridget, I guess, do you have a question? Go ahead. You're muted. You're muted, Bridget.
Yeah, I said, I'm sorry, I guess I'm on one today, and I might have missed this because my dog started fighting behind me, but is there any plan in the proposals to have, you know, like the companies or whatever, essentially, I guess, make a promise to do like native plantings underneath the solar panels, or like what is there any plan for underneath the solar panels?
I think that'll be part of the proposal is what is suggested. We'll discuss that during the interview process. You know, a lot of concerns. I get various emails about concerns like that. What do we do under them? Also, what do we do about animal or what's corridors, natural corridors for animals to move through? Mm-hmm. Are we considering that in the project? So yeah, I'm keeping track of all those, and those are all questions we'll ask as part of our process.
Cool, great.
Yep. Okay. Solarize Kansas City we're kind of in a milestone month right now. October is end of the month is the last that residents, commercial, and nonprofits can sign up for this solar project or to get their free cost estimate. So if you have at all any doubts and you want to sign up, because that allows you, it kind of locks you into the program. Doesn't lock you into a contract, it just gets your foot in the door. The contracting period is the end of December for residential and end of March for commercial and nonprofits. So if you're any of those organizations or if you're a resident, this month is the time to get your name on the list. Response has been strong. We're over 616 now signups. Our goal for this month is 700. So that's what we're hoping to get, 700 before the end of the month. We've got a workshop planned for October 26th. I think that's at 6:30. It's just kind of the last workshop for the program. For if anybody has any questions, concerns, then you can attend that workshop and we can talk through those issues. I think for us in the campaign, what's important is that, you know, once we get done with signups, once the proposals will start the bids are being shared with the customers or the clients, we're going to spend the next month or two as a campaign and the stakeholders really focusing on working with those folks specifically. You know, what are their issues, what are their questions, what are their concerns, to just, you know, do a lot more customer service, more touch points with them. We're doing some of that now. We've had some questions and concerns that are brought to our attention, and the coalition I've got has been great. I see Billy's here with us here with Sierra Club. He's been great. You he's been really knocking it out of the park on trying to bring the solar or the soccer folks on board. So I don't want to go too much into that, but we've got some pretty exciting stuff going on that. But and also I should mention our low income part of this project is also active and ready to go. So for residents or anybody, if you feel like you want to donate towards a solar for a low income family, the website is active to accept donations, and that's all being funneled through the Metropolitan Energy Center. So those dollars that are going into that pot will be used strictly for paying for or 100% subsidy for a 5 kilowatt system for a low income family. And we've got a part of our team will be vetting those applications and making sure that they meet the qualifications and the criteria for that program. So, and I believe we've got somewhere over 25 different families signed up under the Share the Sun program. We really kind of leaned on Jerusalem Farm and Westside Housing to kind of identify families that have already weatherized their homes so we can maximize energy efficiency there, and then layer on the solar, assuming that the roof is a 10-year old or newer roof. So trying to kind of couple some good programs together, but that's what's going on that. So overall, we've got 70 contracts actually in place with residential, and that brings us to about 0.5 megawatt of solar that we've got and that's in the metropolitan area, not just Kansas City. So we'll keep you posted. When the whole project is done in March of next year, Rocky Mountain Institute will then do a final report for us. They'll show us where were all the signups, where were all the contracts. So we're going to see pretty much all of that in one place. So it'll be nice to get that report. Real quick, as many of you already know, the Energy Code passed. So congratulations. Thank you all. We appreciate all the stakeholders, everybody showing up in force. So I would say we're sort of on a roll. The vote was 9-4, but yeah, we're pretty excited about that. So OEQ, we're going to be meeting with our city planning folks to kind of help support them as much as possible with grant funding and anything else to help them get ready for the implementation, which will be in June or July of next year. I see we're really running short on time, so just trying to zip through real quick. We finished up interviews for 2 positions, so we're in the process of going through getting those folks on board. We'll make formal announcements at next month's meeting. So we should be fully staffed hopefully by then. And last thing, the Spire rate case, the last public hearing for that is tomorrow. So October 18th, 6 p.m. at the Greg Kleist Community Center. I'll be there to offer the city's comments. Councilman Shields will be there as well. I'm sure she's going to be offering comments. So if any folks want to get in on that, please do so. Okay, I don't want to use up all the rest of the time, but that's it in a nutshell.
Thanks so much, Andy. I do want to go ahead and get to public comment now. If anyone from the community who's here today has anything they'd like to say, go ahead and raise your hand. And I don't see that anyone has their hand raised yet. I'll give it just a second.
Robin, I would just add for folks who may want to speak, if you do end up speaking, we do ask you to keep your comments to 1 minute, especially since we are getting close on time.
Thanks, Michael. Okay, I don't see anybody with their hand up. So I'd like then to go on and just see if there's any other business or topics for future meetings anybody would like to bring up this time. And if not, you can always send them to me if you think of something later, obviously. But All right, not hearing anything. It's been suggested that maybe we take a break for either our November or December meeting. Wanted to get everybody's thoughts about that. The holidays coming up. Anybody have any preference on whether we keep meeting every month or if we take, oh, Angela?
I was just gonna say, I think preference-wise, I would probably say December would be a good one to skip. That
Yeah.
month's usually a little more crazy than November.
Okay.
Yeah, just the November one would be the week of Thanksgiving, just FYI. So if you stay, it would be that Monday and then Thursday's Thanksgiving.
Yeah. So are we, oh,
Just look, oh, I was just gonna say that Monday in December is the first day of Hanukkah.
hmm,
So I'd be down for the December meeting, canceling that one, but it's up to everyone.
okay. Well, maybe I'll propose we can't go ahead and plan to cancel our December meeting, but have our November meeting, even though it's the Monday before Thanksgiving. But I guess if you can't make it, let me know. And if we can't get a quorum, maybe we'll address that. Does that sound okay with everybody? Anybody opposed? Okay. So then our next meeting for now will be I forget what date that is. I think it's the 21st, November 21st at 3:30. And then we will not have a meeting in December. We'll pick back up in January. So, okay. All right. With that, I guess I'm just checking one more time. I don't see any hands up. So could I get a motion to adjourn?
Motion.
And a second.
Second.
All in favor of adjourning?
Aye.
Aye. All right. Any opposed? Okay. Thanks, everybody. Good meeting, and I'll see you next month.
All right. Have a good night.
All right. Good night.
Good night.